Yesterday, China and Russia tried to make it worth our while to watch their military might, and they even invited two African presidents. And of course, China has been marching through Africa for decades with their Belt and Road strategy. And in the process, America and the West has been pushed out of Africa, increasingly. But President Trump's policy of energy dominance gives us the fulcrum of an opportunity to push back, because we can reach agreements with those African nations still friendly to the United States to unlock the cheapest energy in Africa through American enterprise, technology, and finance. Let's call them Edison Accords, like the Abraham Accords. Because after all, that great American inventor who made electricity accessible to all Americans is the man who said, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles," although that seems to be the past in Britain. This will benefit America. This will counteract China. It will enable Africa to industrialize and help to stabilize the continent which has the fastest growing human population on the face of the earth. So the policy of decarbonizing a continent that has never carbonized is incomprehensible to me. And this started with the Obama administration ab initio. Their renewables-only energy policies, enthusiastically embraced in Europe, have kept Africa in bondage to poverty and to China, and enabled China to do so. While China gained access to critical minerals and agricultural products, the West ensured that Africa will only have access to finance for renewables, which is expensive, and that prevented African countries from industrializing. Moreover, it mired them in debt, mostly to China. This policy redistributed wealth from the West to China, not to Africa. But it increased the grip of China on Africa and African natural resources. Thanks to this renewables über alles policy, there are 600 million people in Africa with no access to electricity at all. I don't think any of you went without electricity on Labor Day. In Africa, going without electricity was just Monday. So if you look at the energy access in Africa, the average African, if you exclude South Africa, the average African has only enough energy to run a fridge for 6.5 hours a day. That's the state of Africa's energy access. But the American energy dominance policy can unlock energy abundance for Africa by providing know-how, finance, technology, and private sector participation with American companies to develop African energy resources for African consumers and for export to world markets. Gas offers a very significant energy opportunity in Africa because Africa has abundant gas resources. Enough gas to generate 400 gigawatt of power and reserves estimated at 800 trillion cubic feet. Half the continent's countries have proven gas reserves. Inadequate infrastructure, lack of financial resources, see existing debt, see China, and poor regulatory frameworks hinder progress, and America can help with that. There's hope because across Africa, natural gas is increasingly recognized as a critical resource to power economic growth. And several countries across East, West, and Southern Africa have discovered large gas reserves and they're keen to develop them. But they have insufficient infrastructure. So this is an opportunity for America. At the moment, they rely on costly diesel fuel or inefficient old coal-fired power plants for electricity, which results in some of the world's highest power tariffs. And of course, having done a lot of work in the 80s and 90s all over African cities, when you see them in winter and they're burning anthracite stoves at home and wood, the pollution is incredible. Gas can turn this around, make Africa's cities healthy. Cheaper power is the heart of human progress and flourishing. It boosts industrial competitiveness, it makes electricity more affordable, and it simply makes human lives better. See Labor Day electricity. Green policy directives resulted in solar power increasing its market share, but it's mostly for off-grid solutions. It's not part of an industrialized economy in Africa because they don't have baseload. So, if you think about it, all the solar power panels provided to Africa, for which they had to borrow money from either the World Bank or other institutions and countries like China, was made using 1,161 coal-fired power plants electricity in producing those panels in China. So enabling Africa to get proper competitiveness and electricity access and cut their generation costs by 50% would be a complete game changer. And there's momentum. America can capitalize on that momentum. Several African nations are now actively pursuing the gas sector. Some of them, like in Mozambique, have real problems with security. Al-Shabaab is stopping Exxon and Total from developing a huge gas find offshore Mozambique. But a receptive environment means that the US can make deals. The Edison Accords can be put in motion. It will deal with some of these challenges, like distribution. Not only are there no pipeline distribution on a scale that is necessary, but where they have grids in Africa, they're old and creaky and falling apart. These are all opportunities for massive investment, for American ingenuity and American companies to make money without getting subsidized, simply by providing a service to the local market. We can help them with regulatory frameworks. We can help their utilities because their utilities often cannot get finance. We can provide technical assistance. In fact, all of these are problems that American companies can solve. And Africa could see gas become its dominant fuel for power by 2030, around the corner. They don't have to wait ages. This translates into opportunities for American companies of about $175 billion in projects, if tackled today. The U.S. Gas Infrastructure Export Initiative, launched by USTDA, has already identified Africa as a priority. And so it really is all available. What we need is for Edison Accord countries to come into the American fold, new gas and clean coal power plants and infrastructure to bring cheaper electricity to communities and businesses, supporting industrialization and job creation, reliable power for factories to run full shifts and hospitals to keep the lights on so the doctors don't have to operate in the dark. They will save foreign exchange, these African countries, because they don't have then to import expensive diesel fuel. And consumers will benefit from lower tariffs and grid expansion will assist them to keep the lights on. So, all in all, there's benefit for America and for Africa. What are they? Well, China is a real priority for the US. And China already has ports and access to ports in 72 African ports. We need a foothold in a prosperous Africa, not beholden to China, and I really believe the Edison Accords will advance key US foreign policy and commercial interests. We can reward our friends in Africa with energy abundance, thereby gaining markets, narrowing China's operating space, and relieve pressure on African nations. We could even figure out a way to force China to take a haircut on their African debt. That would be a very good idea. Facilitating billions in US sales and equipment exports to Africa means growth for American industries and jobs for American workers. Each new contract benefits companies in the US energy supply chain. This is worth doing. It's also strategically important by helping African nations build stable, prosperous energy sectors for their security and ours. The US will deepen diplomatic ties and gain heft in a region where China and Islamic extremism have gained at the expense of America and the West and of Africa. Imagine a time when only the rich will burn candles in Africa. Thank you.